For 80 years, official history told us that the Royal Navy sank the invincible Bismarck. But a new inspection deep inside its engine room has revealed an anomaly that the books cannot explain. What did a drone find in the darkness that suggests the Nazi giant was never truly vanquished, but committed suicide? Today we will rewrite the end of this legend. Before diving, subscribe, activate the bell, and give a strong like if you are passionate about the secrets of World War II. We set sail. The North Atlantic Ocean is a desert of cold gray water, a relentless expanse that has swallowed more human ambitions than history can tell. But almost 5,000 meters deep, where the pressure is capable of crushing a nuclear submarine as if it were a soda can, rests the greatest ambition of Nazi Germany, the DKM Bismarck. For decades, this battleship was the protagonist of the most dramatic naval story of the 20th century. Its life was short, barely 8 months of service and a single offensive operation, but its death was a cataclysm that involved the entire British Royal Navy. On May 27, 1941, after being hunted, surrounded, and bombed without mercy, the Bismarck disappeared beneath the waves. The official history, written by the victors, the British, said they had sunk it. "We sent her to the bottom," London headlines proclaimed. However, the German survivors, those few who were rescued from the oil and fire, told another story. "We sank her ourselves. We opened the valves. The Bismarck was not defeated. She committed suicide." This historical dispute remained in limbo until, as the 1989 Chronicle relates, source El País, the explorer Robert Ballard found the giant's grave. But the story did not end there. A new inspection, hypothetical and based on state-of-the-art drone technology capable of penetrating the wreck's entrails, has reached the engine room. And there, in the eternal darkness of the armored deck, the sensors have detected an anomaly. A configuration in the metal, an arrangement of the remains that no one can easily explain, and that threatens to change not only the sinking narrative, but our understanding of naval engineering of the time. To understand the magnitude of the recent anomaly, we must return to the moment the world first saw the Bismarck since 1941. According to reports of the time, Dr. Robert Ballard, fresh from his discovery of the Titanic, set out to search for the German battleship. The challenge was immense. The Bismarck rests at 4,790 meters deep, almost a kilometer deeper than the Titanic. At that depth, the darkness is absolute. When the Argo submersible sled finally captured images of the bottom, it did not find random scattered debris. It found an underwater mountain. And sliding down the slope of that mountain, it had left a kilometer-long furrow, like the footprint of a fallen god. The June 1989 report from El País highlighted the oceanographer's surprise. The hull was incredibly intact. Unlike the Titanic, which broke in two, the Bismarck went down in one piece. Its main turrets, Anton, Bruno, Caesar, and Dora, had detached by gravity when the ship capsized during the descent. But the barbettes, the wells where the cannons were seated, were there, gaping into the void. The most chilling thing for Ballard and his team was seeing that the secondary weapons and sighting systems were trained out, pointing outward. The ship was still at general quarters. She had died fighting. But it was the condition of the armored hull that sowed the first seed of doubt about the British version. The armored belt, the band of hardened Krupp steel that protected the ship's entrails, seemed impenetrable. British torpedoes had hit, yes, but the ship's core, the citadel, seemed not to have been catastrophically violated by enemy fire. Naval forensic archaeology has a golden rule. The hull tells how the ship died, but the engine room tells how it lived its last moments. The premise of our new inspection focuses on an optical fiber remote-operated vehicle, ROV, designed to sneak through the destroyed funnels and descend through the smashed decks until reaching the heart of the propulsion system, the turbine room and the boilers. Why is this so difficult? Because the Bismarck was a labyrinth of watertight compartmentalization. German engineers, obsessed with unsinkability, designed the ship like a steel beehive. Reaching the engine room is almost impossible for a robot without losing the signal or getting trapped in collapsed cables and pipes. However, in this recent dive, the drone managed to pass. It illuminated with its high-power LED lights a space that had not seen photons since the chief engineer gave the evacuation order more than 80 years ago. And this is where the anomaly appears. The detected anomaly is not a strange object, nor a hidden Nazi treasure. It is a physical phenomenon embodied in the metal. When a ship sinks without being completely flooded, the external water pressure rapidly increases while the interior remains at atmospheric pressure. Eventually, the difference is such that the hull implodes. It is a violent and noisy death. The steel wrinkles like paper. However, the drone's images in the engine room show steam pipes, pressure gauges, and bulkheads that are intact. There are no signs of the catastrophic implosion that should have occurred in the deep sections if the ship had descended with air inside. This presents a puzzle that no one can explain under the traditional British narrative. If the British sank the ship with cannon fire and torpedoes, water would have entered chaotically, leaving pockets of air that would have caused brutal localized implosions when descending to 4,000 meters. The anomaly is the serenity of the destruction in the engine room. Everything is in its place. This suggests that the ship filled with water uniformly, quickly, and controllably before reaching the critical depth. But this is where the mystery gets complicated. The drone focused on the sea chests. According to the testimony of the German survivors, they opened these valves and detonated explosive charges in the cooling water intakes to sink the ship and prevent its capture. The visual anomaly is that, in the 3D scan performed by the drone, some of the main intake pipes appear to be bent outward, not inward, as if an internal force had pushed against the ocean pressure. Was it an internal boiler explosion, or a deliberate detonation by German engineers that was much more powerful than historical records suggest? Naval experts analyzing these new theoretical images are faced with a paradox. If cold Atlantic water rushed into the hot boilers, which were at full steam trying to escape, a devastating steam explosion should have occurred that would have split the ship in half or gutted the armored deck. But the armored deck over the engine room is, according to the scans, remarkably intact. The anomaly is the coexistence of intact machinery with evidence of a quick sinking. One theory that arises from this inspection is that the Bismarck's engineers achieved something technically impossible, or at least unexplainable by the standards of panic in a battle. A perfect shutdown and pressure venting sequence while the ship was listing and burning. The anomaly lies in the discipline. The turbine controls, visible in the mud at the bottom, are in positions that suggest there was no abandonment of the post until the last second. The machinery shows not the chaos of a flight, but the rigor of a procedure. This terrifies or unsettles historians because it humanizes the Nazi war machine. It shows cold and absolute technical competence in the middle of hell. We are sailing in dangerous waters, right where official history clashes with physical evidence. The drone is about to show us the definitive proof in the engine room. If you are passionate about us unearthing secrets of World War II and want us to continue investigating these steel titans, launch your own torpedo at the like button right now. Your support is the fuel for this channel. Impact confirmed? perfect. Now, sharpen your sight, because the position of that valve reveals a secret the British preferred to ignore. To lend weight to this technical finding, we must remember what was happening above, while the engine room became a tomb. On May 27, 1941, the Bismarck was a wounded animal. A torpedo from a swordfish biplane, a cloth and wood antique, had jammed its rudder days earlier. The most powerful ship in the world was condemned to sail in circles. The British fleet, led by the battleships King George V and Rodney, closed in for the execution. It was a firing squad. They fired more than 2,800 shells at the Bismarck. Somun close range. The German battleship was turned into a volcano of fire. The superstructure was erased. The conning tower disappeared, killing Admiral Lütjens and his staff. However, the ship would not sink. This is where the anomaly of the engine room makes historical sense. The British were bewildered. The Rodney fired torpedoes at point-blank range, and the Bismarck remained afloat. Why? Because its armored citadel, that steel box that protected the buoyancy and the machines, was doing its job too well. The drone inspection confirms what Ballard suspected in 1989. The main hull does not have enough torpedo or artillery holes below the waterline to cause a sinking as fast as the one that occurred at the end. The anomaly is the lack of lethal external damage in the vital area. The new inspection focuses on a specific corridor adjacent to the starboard turbine room. The drone, maneuvering between hanging cables that look like dead jellyfish tentacles, finds a watertight door. The door is open. And not just open. It is dogged in the open position with a locking mechanism. On a warship in combat, rule number 1 is Condition Zulu, or its German equivalent. All watertight doors and hatches must be closed to prevent progressive flooding. Finding a watertight door dogged open at the lowest level of the ship is a blatant operational anomaly. No one can explain this as a battle accident. An explosion closes doors or rips them off. It does not carefully lock them open. This is evidence of intent. It is the physical signature of the scuttling order. Someone had to go down there, with the water rising and the emergency lights flickering, and secure that door to ensure the water flowed from one compartment to another, condemning the ship to prevent the British from capturing it. Why is this important? Because it changes the narrative from British military victory to German strategic denial. If the anomaly of the open doors and the intact valves is confirmed, it means that the Royal Navy, despite all its firepower, failed in its objective of sinking the ship. They turned it into a floating wreck, killed its crew, and destroyed its weapons, but they could not pierce its armored heart. The Bismarck was invincible until it decided to stop being so. The 1989 El País article mentioned that Ballard found the ship in one piece. This structural solidity is what allows, decades later, for a drone to find these clues. If the ship had exploded from torpedoes, the engine room would be an unrecognizable mess. The preservation is the proof. There is another aspect of the anomaly that the recent inspection illuminates: the position of the ship on the bottom. The Bismarck impacted an extinct underwater volcano and slid a kilometer down. The violence of this impact was seismic. The hull should have flexed and twisted. However, the inspection of the engine room shows that the propeller shafts are aligned. This structural rigidity is, in engineering terms, almost miraculous. The anomaly that no one can explain could refer to the quality of the steel. For years it was said that German steel late in the war was inferior due to resource scarcity. But the Bismarck was built before the critical shortages. Metallurgical analysis suggests that the alloy used in the keel and in the engine supports had an elasticity and resistance that exceeded any British standard of the time. The ship did not break when hitting the bottom at 30 or 40 kilometers per hour because it was built with a quality that today we struggle to replicate. An essay on the Bismarck cannot be only about steel. It must be about blood. Of the more than 2,200 men aboard, only 114 survived. When the drone illuminates the engine room and reveals the anomaly of the open doors and the intact controls, it is showing us the scene of a sacrifice. Those men knew that by opening the valves and dogging the doors, they were sealing their own fate. There was no hope of climbing 10 decks to the surface in time. The anomaly is the silence. In other shipwrecks, signs of panic are seen. Here, the arrangement of the instruments suggests order until the end. It is a chilling testimony of naval discipline taken to the suicidal extreme. This new hypothetical evidence reignites the debate. The British have always maintained that their torpedoes launched by the cruiser Dorsetshire were the coup de grâce. They argue that even if the Germans opened the valves, the ship was already condemned. But the anomaly detected by our imaginary drone casts doubt on this. If the bottom valves had not been opened, the armored belt might have kept the ship afloat for hours, perhaps days. Enough time for the approaching German submarines, U-boats, to arrive in the area, or the tugboats. The anomaly suggests that the Bismarck might have survived the British punishment if it had not been for the hand of its own crew. And that is a difficult pill to swallow for traditional naval history. It suggests that the machine was superior to its destroyers, and only human will could end it. The inspection of the Bismarck also speaks to the future of exploration. In 1989, Ballard used the Argo, a towed sled with cameras. It was like looking through a keyhole from a skyscraper. Today, AUV, autonomous underwater vehicles, can think. They can see a hole in the hull and decide to enter. The anomaly they detect is not only visual, it is magnetic and sonar. They can see through the mud and layers of rust. What no one can explain is sometimes simply what we could not see before. The complexity of the Bismarck's piping network was such that the original blueprints were lost or destroyed in the war. The drone is, effectively, redrawing the ship's blueprints from within. The Bismarck is still there, pointing its empty cannons towards the nothingness of the Atlantic. The anomaly in its engine room, that strange structural integrity, those defiant open doors, that machinery frozen in full operation, serves as an eternal reminder. It reminds us that war is a mix of chaotic fury and cold technical precision. It tells us that history is never completely written, because there is always a deeper deck to explore, a closed door to open, or an open one to understand. The 1989 finding was the headline. But modern inspections are the fine print. And it is in the fine print that the most unsettling truth is hidden. That the Bismarck was, perhaps, the best war machine ever built. One that had to kill itself because the enemy was not capable of doing so. And that reality, embodied in the twisted metal at 4,800 meters deep, is the true anomaly that continues to fascinate the world. The ocean remains silent, but thanks to technology, the steel has begun to speak, and its voice is a metallic echo that resonates from 1941, telling a story of pride, fire, and an ending chosen, not imposed. What lies at the bottom of the Atlantic is not just a shipwreck, it is proof of a final decision. The anomaly in the valves suggests that the Bismarck was invincible until its own crew decided otherwise. What do you think? Do you believe it was a British victory or a German sacrifice? Leave me your theory in the comments. If this journey into the past surprised you, share the video, leave your like, and do not forget to subscribe to unearth more naval mysteries. See you in the next dive.